March 2nd, 1944. Stalag Luft III, Sagan, Germany. A biting wind cuts through the barbed wire as snowflakes whisper across the frozen ground. Beneath the cover of night, Flight Lieutenant James Carter presses his gloved hands into the earth, crawling through a narrow tunnel just wide enough to breathe. Behind him, muffled heartbeats echo in the darkness. 20 men, each praying the tunnel doesn't collapse. A distant spotlight sweeps across the camp, its beams slicing through the night like a blade. Carter freezes, his breath a thin ghost in the air. A guard's boots crunch in the snow above, then fade. Inch by inch, he drags himself forward until his fingertips break through the cold surface. He emerges under the shadow of pine trees, his RAF uniform smeared with dirt and fear. The tunnel, code-named Harry, had taken months to dig. Now, with only a compass, forged papers, and a few scraps of bread, Carter begins what would become a 500-mile walk home through enemy territory. The forest loomed like a black sea of shadows. Carter moved slowly, his boots crunching faintly over crusted snow. Every sound, the creak of a branch, the cry of an owl, felt like it could betray him. He kept low, avoiding the moonlight, clutching his compass in one hand and the thin map hidden in his glove. By dawn, he had already covered several miles north toward the Oder River. His uniform offered little warmth. Frost clung to his collar, and his breath came in painful gasps. When a German patrol truck rattled along a nearby road, he dove into a ditch, pressing himself into the mud until it passed. Days blurred together. Carter scavenged from abandoned barns, stealing bits of stale bread or half-frozen potatoes. Once, he traded his wristwatch to a Polish farmer for a flask of water and a crust of rye bread. The man's trembling eyes said everything about the risk he was taking. Every step north brought him closer to freedom, and closer to death from exhaustion, hunger, or discovery. 5 days into his escape, Carter reached the banks of the Oder River, wide, half-frozen, and deadly cold. The moon hung low, reflecting off shards of ice like broken glass. Across that river lay occupied Poland, and beyond it, a long road to home. But the current was strong, the ice unpredictable. He stripped down to his undershirt, tying his uniform in a bundle over his head. His skin burned from the cold air before he even touched the water. Then splash! The freezing current hit him like 1,000 knives. He kicked hard, fighting to keep his head above water. The ice cracked and sliced his hands as he clawed his way through. Halfway across, the numbness nearly consumed him, whispering for him to let go. But the thought of capture, or worse, kept him alive. After what felt like hours, he dragged himself onto the far bank, shivering violently. He lay there in the mud, coughing river water, his heartbeat thundering in his ears. Somehow he made it across. But now came the harder part, blending into the countryside, where everyone spoke a language he barely knew, and every uniformed man could end his journey in an instant. Carter stumbled through the Polish countryside, his legs heavy, his body burning with fever. He moved only at night, sleeping in haylofts and abandoned mills by day. Hunger gnawed at him like a second heartbeat. But one night, fate intervened. While hiding near a small village, he was discovered by a young woman named Anya, her kerchief dusted with flour from the day's baking. Instead of shouting for help, she whispered, "You are not German, are you?" When he shook his head, she led him to her family's cellar. There, Carter found kindness, warm soup, dry clothes, and the language of silent understanding. Anya's father, a member of the Polish underground, marked a route on his map, through Krakow, across the Tatra Mountains, and toward Hungary, a path others had taken to reach Allied territory. Before dawn, they gave him a new coat and said only one word, "Go." The next weeks were a blur of narrow escapes. A Nazi checkpoint he slipped past in a cold train, the echo of dogs howling in the woods, the frostbite creeping into his fingertips. But his will to live burned brighter than the cold. By late March, Carter had crossed more than 400 miles of hostile land. His body was broken, feet blistered, ribs visible beneath his torn coat, but his spirit refused to surrender. The snow had begun to melt, turning the paths into rivers of mud. Each sunrise felt like a small miracle. One night, as he trudged along a mountain trail near the Slovak border, a patrol spotted movement. Shouts rang out. Gunfire tore through the dark. Carter dove behind rocks, rolling down a slope, his heart hammering like artillery. He crawled through icy mud until the voices faded. When dawn came, he found himself staring across a valley. Hungary lay beyond it, neutral ground, the final step toward freedom. 2 days later, an Allied contact smuggled him across under a false identity. When he finally reached a British consulate, he collapsed at the doorway, whispering only one word: home. Carter's journey, 500 miles on foot through enemy territory, became a quiet legend among escapees. He was one of the few who not only broke out, but made it all the way back. A man whose will to live was stronger than any wall, any war, any winter. If you felt every frozen step of Carter's journey, don't forget to honor his courage by hitting like and subscribe to America in Time. Every week, we uncover real stories of survival, sacrifice, and the spirit that defined a generation. Comment below, would you have risked it all for freedom? Join us next time as we bring history's forgotten heroes back to life.